It was just another ordinary evening in a quiet Delaware town, October 11th, 1970. The lights were warm in a small suburban kitchen, a mother preparing dinner for her children, the aroma of home filling the air. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. She vanished. No screams, no struggle, no trace. The only witnesses were two frightened children left behind in a house that suddenly felt empty, haunted by silence. Decades later, the questions remain: was it a desperate escape, a shocking crime, or something even more sinister? A man would later confess to taking her life, yet the truth is buried deep, alongside a body that was never found. We unravel the chilling story of a disappearance that has puzzled detectives for over 50 years, a case where every lead ends in shadows and every answer only deepens the mystery. It was an evening like any other in the small town of Sussex County, Delaware. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving a soft orange glow that filtered through the curtains of a modest suburban home. Inside, the aroma of simmering stew filled the air, a comforting sign that dinner was nearly ready. Two children played quietly in the living room, their laughter faint but warm, while their mother moved about the kitchen, checking the stove, arranging plates, humming a tune that had become a part of their nightly ritual. To an outsider, everything seemed perfectly normal, the kind of peaceful domestic scene that reassured a community and lulled neighbors into the illusion of safety. But behind this ordinary evening lurked a tension that few could see. Those who knew her spoke of a life quietly strained by a turbulent marriage, whispers of arguments and reconciliations that painted a picture of domestic fragility. Her husband was away that night, the children too young to comprehend the subtle unease that sometimes flickered in their mother's eyes. The world outside continued its routine, oblivious to the storm about to shatter the calm of this household. And then, without warning, the ordinary evening dissolved into something unexplainable. It began with small, almost imperceptible anomalies. A chair slightly moved out of place, a door left ajar where it was usually closed, a shadow lingering in the corner of the kitchen that didn't belong. At first, the children thought it was part of a game, a trick of the fading light, or perhaps their imagination. Their mother called them to the table, the familiar voice soothing yet hurried, a subtle tremor in her tone. She was never seen again. The stew remained on the stove, steaming and untouched, as if frozen in time. Two small sets of eyes stared from the living room, unable to understand why their mother had simply disappeared. Detectives later described the scene as eerily silent, almost sacred in its stillness. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, nothing to suggest a crime had occurred. It was as if the house itself had conspired to swallow her whole, leaving only questions in its wake. Every drawer, every cabinet, every corner was examined meticulously, yet no clue emerged. The only certainty was absence, a void that would haunt investigators for decades. The first leads seemed promising but dissolved into dead ends. Neighbors reported seeing nothing unusual, no unfamiliar cars, no strange figures lurking near the house. Some recalled hearing a car door slam in the distance, a vague memory that might have been ordinary or might have been a signal of the extraordinary. Every statement was scrutinized, every timeline reconstructed, yet each path led to shadows and echoes rather than answers. The sense of normalcy had been shattered so completely that even those closest to her could not pinpoint when the ordinary became impossible. As hours turned into days, the tension thickened. Law enforcement expanded searches into nearby fields and woods, questioning anyone who might have passed the area. Yet each inquiry raised more questions than it answered. Could she have left voluntarily? Had she been coerced or abducted? The children's stories were vague, fragmented, filtered through fear and confusion. The house, once a symbol of comfort, now felt like a labyrinth of secrets. Every empty room a reminder of a mystery growing colder by the hour. Even decades later, investigators would return to the details of that final evening, trying to reconstruct the subtle nuances of what had happened. Every object in the kitchen, every detail in the children's accounts, every fragment of memory became a potential key to understanding the inexplicable. Was it an escape from an unseen danger, or the beginning of a nightmare no one could have imagined? Each theory carried its own chilling possibilities, each hypothesis a thread in a web that grew ever more tangled. The ordinary evening had become the perfect enigma, a puzzle that refused to yield its answer, tantalizing and terrifying in equal measure. And yet, the house remained as it had been that night, the faint smell of dinner lingering like a ghost, a haunting reminder of a life interrupted. Those who study cold cases know the significance of such details, the ordinary that suddenly isn't, the calm that fractures without warning. For every lead that failed to materialize, for every question left unanswered, the mystery deepened. The ordinary evening had ended, but the story it began would echo across decades, challenging every assumption, defying every expectation, and leaving a single relentless question burning in the minds of all who dared to follow it. What truly happened inside that quiet house on October 11th, 1970? Behind the closed doors of the small suburban home, life appeared ordinary, but beneath the surface, tension simmered like a hidden storm. Friends and neighbors recalled seeing smiles exchanged in public, the picture of a reconciled couple, but those who knew the household best understood the quiet fractures lurking behind the facade. Arguments had flared in the past, sometimes over money, sometimes over trivial misunderstandings, but each confrontation left subtle scars that lingered long after the voices faded. The mother, meticulous and careful, often carried a weight in her eyes, a vigilance shaped by years of negotiating a fragile domestic balance. Her husband, a man of routine and habits, was sometimes distant, sometimes controlling, leaving unspoken rules that shaped the rhythm of their household. On the evening she disappeared, investigators later pieced together fragments suggesting tension that might have been invisible to outsiders but deeply felt within the walls of the home. Phone messages hinted at disagreements earlier in the week, minor disputes over finances, errands, and household responsibilities, but none of these seemed extreme enough to predict what would follow. And yet, within these small fissures lay a labyrinth of possibilities. Each conversation, each silent glance, potentially a clue to a far darker reality. Close friends described her as resilient but cautious, a woman who carefully navigated the complexities of her marriage, always aware of the subtle dynamics that could turn routine interactions into conflict. The children, too young to understand the intricacies, nevertheless sensed unease. Small gestures like a door closing too softly or a sigh escaping her lips hinted at a tension that hung invisibly, a silent undercurrent in the home. Detectives later noted that understanding these dynamics was crucial. In many cold cases, the truth hides not in grand gestures, but in the everyday, in the routine interactions that hold the key to motive, opportunity, and fear. Investigators scrutinized the husband's actions and whereabouts in the days and hours leading up to her disappearance. His alibi was confirmed by neighbors and coworkers, yet subtle inconsistencies in timelines sparked suspicion. Some accounts conflicted with others, creating small pockets of doubt that widened under careful examination. Even routine behavior, like returning home slightly later than usual or making unexpected stops on the drive, was dissected for possible significance. Each piece of the puzzle seemed ordinary, yet the challenge lay precisely in discerning which ordinary detail masked something sinister. Psychologists and criminal profilers later examined the dynamics of the household. They suggested that a pattern of controlling behavior, if present, could have escalated the evening into tragedy. Yet, without concrete evidence, such speculation remained tantalizingly out of reach. Other theories considered external threats, a visitor, a neighbor, or even a stranger taking advantage of an ordinary evening. The ambiguity was suffocating. Every possibility carried weight, every scenario plausible, yet none verifiable. The marriage, once a private sanctuary, became a landscape of potential motives and dangers, with hidden cracks that might explain a sudden vanishing. Letters, diaries, and notes found after her disappearance revealed subtle expressions of frustration, exhaustion, and sometimes fear, though none explicitly pointed to danger. They were ordinary confessions in extraordinary circumstances, fragments that hinted at a life under pressure, a woman navigating daily challenges while carrying unspoken burdens. To investigators, these details were invaluable, yet simultaneously maddening, offering glimpses without certainty and raising questions that would echo for decades. Even today, experts emphasize that the most critical insights often come from the intimate details of domestic life. The rhythms of a home, the subtle negotiations of space and authority, and the patterns of ordinary routines can all conceal explosive outcomes. In this case, the ordinary evening, shaped by a marriage filled with unspoken tensions, may have held the seeds of disappearance long before the door closed for the last time. Every unanswered question, every shadow in memory pushes observers to wonder, was it an accident, an escape, or something darker that fateful night? The quiet dynamics of a troubled marriage have the power to transform the familiar into the unknowable, leaving only fragments for investigators and viewers to reconstruct, piece by tantalizing piece. Weeks after her disappearance, a whisper began circulating, an unverified rumor suggesting she might have fled to Puerto Rico. At first, it seemed plausible to some. After all, she had expressed dreams of warmer climates, sandy beaches, and a life far removed from the tensions of her small-town existence. Detectives noted the theory, cataloging every possible lead, yet immediately confronted a wall of uncertainty. No travel records, no airline tickets, no witnesses, and no confirmed sightings existed to support such a journey. The notion hovered between hope and skepticism, tantalizing and frustrating in equal measure. Investigators dug into the theory with caution, questioning friends, acquaintances, and distant relatives. Had she mentioned plans to leave the state? Did she possess the means, financially or otherwise, to escape unnoticed? Small discrepancies in testimonies, comments about sudden interest in vacation brochures, casual remarks about taking a trip, unexplained absences, were scrutinized obsessively. Each fragment of information became a potential thread, yet each also dissolved under rigorous examination. The more they probed, the more the story seemed to bend, eluding concrete evidence while refusing to vanish entirely. Neighbors recalled fleeting anomalies in her behavior the week before she disappeared. A missing checkbook, a purse moved slightly off its usual place. Conversations cut short. While none of these signs directly pointed to a flight south, they added layers of intrigue. Could a meticulously organized plan exist that left no trace behind? Or were these anomalies merely coincidences, benign fragments of daily life now overlaid with the shadow of mystery? The tension mounted, each unanswered question feeding a sense of unease that investigators described as a puzzle with too many missing pieces. As weeks turned into months, the Puerto Rico theory became both a distraction and a tantalizing possibility. Law enforcement followed leads, scanning passenger logs, interviewing contacts, and reviewing any potential evidence that might indicate travel. They encountered dead ends at every turn. Airlines confirmed no bookings under her name. Friends and relatives reported no communication or signs of her presence abroad. Yet the rumor persisted in media reports and local conversations, a ghostly explanation that offered comfort to some and doubt to others. Criminal profilers considered the implications of such a disappearance. If she had indeed planned to vanish, the timing and secrecy would have been remarkable, bordering on impossible for someone balancing family responsibilities. Her children remained at home, a factor that complicated any theory of voluntary departure. The idea that a woman could vanish without notice, without resources, and without leaving a single footprint strained credulity. Yet, in the absence of a body or definitive crime scene, the theory could not be entirely dismissed. It lingered as a shadow, a narrative fragment hovering in the investigative record. Investigators also examined possible accomplices or facilitators, exploring whether someone might have assisted her in escaping unnoticed. Again, the trail went cold. No transactions, no travel arrangements, no credible leads emerged. Each hypothesis, no matter how meticulously constructed, collided with the stubborn reality of silence. In this uncertainty, the Puerto Rico theory became emblematic of the larger case. Plausible, tantalizing, but ultimately elusive. Public fascination grew alongside investigative frustration. Media coverage repeated the possibility, often framing it as a tantalizing what-if scenario. Viewers, neighbors, and distant observers speculated endlessly, blending fact, rumor, and imagination into a complex narrative. For law enforcement, however, every unverified claim meant wasted resources, endless cross-checking, and the gnawing realization that truth and myth were becoming dangerously intertwined. The more the investigators pursued this potential explanation, the clearer it became that the line between disappearance and abduction was blurred. If she had not left voluntarily, the theory of Puerto Rico became a convenient smokescreen. perhaps even an intentional misdirection by someone who wanted to obscure the truth. Every investigation thread doubled back on itself, creating a maze of uncertainty. Each lead carried the thrill of potential discovery, yet each also spiraled into the frustration of dead ends, unanswered questions, and the chilling realization that the truth could remain forever out of reach. By the end of this phase, the Puerto Rico theory had transformed from a simple rumor into a symbol of the case's enduring mystery. It highlighted the delicate balance investigators had to maintain, follow every lead, however implausible, without letting speculation obscure fact. The enigma of a potential escape to a distant island mirrored the greater puzzle: a life interrupted, a home left behind, and a case where every answer seemed to create more questions. The shadows of uncertainty stretched long, leaving detectives, family, and viewers alike to wonder. Was it a voluntary disappearance, or was the real story hidden somewhere in the silence that followed? From the moment she vanished, the investigation began with urgency, yet almost immediately obstacles appeared. Officers combed the house from top to bottom, lifting fingerprints, cataloging every object, inspecting every corner. The kitchen table still held traces of dinner that would never be eaten. Drawers were opened and closed countless times, yet nothing suggested where she had gone. There was no forced entry, no signs of a struggle, no abandoned vehicle. It was as if the very act of disappearance had erased itself from the physical world. Detectives quickly realized that this would not be a simple case. The absence of evidence was its own form of mystery. Neighbors were interviewed repeatedly, each conversation revealing tiny, contradictory details. A neighbor reported seeing a dark car idling near the house that evening, but the make and model changed with every retelling. Another mentioned hearing a loud noise, though the timing conflicted with official timelines. Investigators pieced together a chronology that felt fragile, like sand slipping through fingers. Every potential lead seemed promising at first, only to evaporate when examined closely. The children's testimonies were revisited endlessly. Their memories were fragmented, shaped by fear and confusion, yet they were the only witnesses to a reality that no one else had seen. Small observations, an open window, a fleeting shadow became clues, but each clue led to a maze of uncertainty. Detectives attempted to reconstruct the night with painstaking precision, yet the ordinary became extraordinary, and the line between accident, voluntary disappearance, and foul play blurred under the weight of missing answers. Despite exhaustive efforts, the investigation hit a frustrating standstill. Officers traced phone records, checked banks, and even scrutinized every route to nearby towns, but no trace emerged. They contacted airports, bus stations, and ferry lines, attempting to detect any sign of travel, yet the trail went cold at every checkpoint. Each unfruitful effort deepened the sense of mystery, highlighting how ordinary systems of record and detection could be rendered powerless by a single vanishing act. Over time, attention turned to potential suspects. The husband, neighbors, and acquaintances were all considered, with timelines and alibis painstakingly cross-checked, yet inconsistencies were minor, circumstantial, and ultimately inconclusive. Each possible explanation raised more questions than it answered. If she had left voluntarily, why leave no sign? If abducted, where could someone take her without leaving a trace? And if something more sinister occurred at home, why were there no physical clues, no disturbance, no witness account of violence? Investigators also explored patterns from similar cases, reviewing missing persons reports from surrounding counties. Certain elements, disappearance without struggle, household left intact, no apparent motive, matched a few unsolved cases from previous years. Yet each comparison only magnified the mystery. How could someone vanish so completely, leaving a family and a town in limbo? The patterns suggested possibilities, but the answers remained tantalizingly out of reach. Months turned into years, and the investigation became a study in frustration. Technology was limited. DNA testing, advanced forensics, and digital tracking were decades away. Detectives relied on persistence, intuition, and the meticulous documentation of inconsistencies. Every clue was scrutinized, every witness questioned, yet the case resisted closure at every turn. With each passing year, memories faded, potential witnesses moved away, and the trail grew colder. Yet the case never disappeared from the minds of those assigned to it. The very absence of evidence became a haunting presence, a silent taunt that demanded attention. The investigation that seemed so promising in the early days became an enduring puzzle, each failed lead intensifying the sense of suspense. For viewers and investigators alike, the story highlighted a cruel truth. Not all disappearances leave fingerprints or footprints. Some vanish into shadows, leaving nothing but questions, uncertainty, and the relentless need for answers that may never come. In this case, every step forward seemed to dissolve into the unknown, making the ordinary streets of a quiet Delaware town a labyrinth of mystery and unfulfilled curiosity. Years passed, the trail grew colder, and the case teetered on the edge of being forgotten. Then in 1988, a revelation shook the fragile balance between hope and despair. A man long known to authorities for unrelated crimes admitted to taking her life. His confession, casual yet chilling, spread through the law enforcement community like wildfire. Investigators felt a surge of both relief and trepidation. Finally, a breakthrough, but it came with a catch that would haunt them for decades. The details he offered were scarce, fragmented, and maddeningly incomplete. No location for the body, no sequence of events, no explanation for motive, just the unsettling claim that he had ended a life and left it buried where no one would ever find it. The confession ignited a flurry of activity. Detectives retraced the man's known haunts, interviewed associates, and re-examined decades-old evidence under the weight of this new lead. They analyzed his past behaviors, seeking patterns that could corroborate the confession or reveal deception. Some details aligned vaguely with previous investigative threads, a certain route he frequently traveled, an acquaintance who had been questioned before, but none produced concrete proof. The investigation had entered a murky zone where every fact seemed plausible yet unverifiable, and every assumption risked being wrong. Family members were devastated by the claim. A mixture of relief that someone had spoken and fear that the confession might be false created emotional turmoil. Their grief, frozen since her disappearance, was stirred anew, reopening wounds they had struggled to keep closed. The children, now adults themselves, faced the impossible. Trusting the words of a man who had vanished from the public eye long before the confession, whose credibility was as shadowed as the empty house that had once been their home. Forensic experts revisited every detail of the original investigation. Soil samples, letters, and photographs were re-examined in search of connections that might lead to a burial site. Every inch of surrounding woods, every pond, every abandoned structure within his possible reach was considered a potential hiding place. Yet the body remained elusive. The confession had illuminated the possibility of a crime, but not the evidence to substantiate it. Each failed attempt deepened the sense of frustration, as if the man's words were both a key and a lock simultaneously. Detectives also confronted the challenge of intent. Why confess without providing actionable details? Was it guilt, a desire for notoriety, or a final act of manipulation? Criminal profilers debated whether he sought attention, redemption, or simply wanted to play with the emotions of those affected. His partial admission became a psychological puzzle, one where truth and deceit intertwined, complicating every step of the investigation. Each scenario painted a different picture of what might have occurred that night decades ago. Public fascination reignited. News outlets recounted the confession, theorizing motives and speculating about potential burial sites. Viewers and readers were drawn into the labyrinth of half-truths and unverified claims. Each new theory added to the suspense, making the story feel alive again. Yet the core mystery, the woman's fate, remained unsolved. Every headline, every discussion was tinged with unease, as if the case had grown teeth that could not be silenced by time or distance. Even with this confession, investigators could not close the case. The absence of a body meant that no charges could be filed, no trial could be conducted, and justice remained an abstract concept. The confession, rather than providing closure, served as a magnifying glass for the uncertainty that had defined the case from the beginning. It was both a revelation and a trap, illuminating the darkness while leaving the essential questions unanswered. In the end, the dead man's words became part of the enduring puzzle, a haunting echo in a case defined by absence and mystery. For detectives, family, and anyone following the story, the confession was a chilling reminder that sometimes truth comes in fragments, enough to tease, enough to torment, but never enough to provide certainty. It was a whisper from the past, a puzzle piece that refused to fit neatly, leaving all who encountered it to wonder, had the right person confessed, or was the real story still hidden, buried alongside the unanswered questions that refused to die? Decades of searching had produced no body, no physical evidence, and no definitive answers, leaving the case suspended in a haunting state of uncertainty. Investigators scoured every conceivable location, from dense forests and winding rivers to abandoned sheds and forgotten wells, yet the landscape yielded nothing. Each search was a mixture of hope and frustration, as if the ground itself had conspired to swallow the truth. Volunteers and law enforcement teams meticulously combed the terrain, but the woman's remains remained elusive, a ghostly presence that refused to be claimed by earth or memory. Experts debated how a person could vanish so completely. Could someone skilled in concealment orchestrate a disappearance so thorough that no trace remained for decades? The possibilities were as chilling as they were frustrating. Perhaps the body had been moved to multiple locations, buried and exhumed repeatedly to avoid detection. Or maybe it rested in a place so inaccessible that human eyes had never glimpsed it. Every theory brought new questions, each one heavier than the last, compounding the agony of the unresolved mystery. Law enforcement revisited maps, tracing every road, trail, and property the known suspect might have accessed. They considered rivers, creeks, and marshes as potential final resting places, employing divers and cadaver dogs, scanning for anomalies that could indicate concealment. Each investigation yielded small clues, a footprint here, a shifted stone there, but none led to the definitive discovery. The absence of a body became a psychological obstacle as well as a physical one, a void that seemed to mock the very concept of closure. Forensic specialists theorized about decomposition patterns and environmental factors. Could the elements, scavengers, or accidental shifts have hidden the remains entirely? Even with the most advanced techniques, the case defied resolution. Investigators imagined scenarios where the body might have been buried shallowly, only to be exposed and dispersed over time, leaving fragments that no modern technology could yet detect. Each hypothesis carried its own tension, a sense that the truth was tantalizingly close yet perpetually out of reach. Family members endured the torment of ambiguity. Without a body, grief had no final form. Every day carried the weight of uncertainty. Was she alive somewhere, hiding or held against her will? Or was the confession of the deceased suspect true, the body hidden so effectively that no search could ever uncover it? This limbo created a unique anguish, an endless cycle of hope and despair that investigators could sense with each meeting and interview. The mystery deepened as new technological methods emerged. Cadaver dogs trained with modern scent techniques were deployed, and ground-penetrating radar was employed in suspected locations, yet the searches remained fruitless. Each attempt reinforced the eerie perfection of her disappearance. It became clear that the absence of evidence was not merely a coincidence. It was the defining feature of the case. The body's invisibility transformed the investigation into a study of shadows, of possibilities that could not be confirmed, and of the cruel patience required to chase an answer that seemed designed to elude discovery. Criminal profilers emphasized the psychological weight of a case without a body. A suspect could confess, theories could multiply, and witnesses could recall details, yet the absence of remains ensured no tangible confirmation. The suspense was relentless, leaving detectives and viewers alike in a constant state of tension. The empty spaces became as significant as any clue, suggesting secrets deliberately concealed and truths carefully buried. Ultimately, the missing body transformed the case into a paradox. It was both alive in memory and absent from reality. The search for remains became a symbolic pursuit of justice, truth, and closure, each investigation layer uncovering only more questions. The unresolved nature of the case made it timeless, a story that could never be fully closed, where every new lead, every whispered rumor, and every subtle clue fueled a suspense that refused to dissipate. For those following the trail, the absence of a body was not merely a gap in evidence. It was the heart of the mystery itself. a chilling reminder that some disappearances leave nothing but shadows and unanswered questions. Decades have passed, yet the questions remain relentless, refusing to fade into history. The disappearance continues to haunt the quiet streets of Sussex County, a lingering enigma that shapes memories and shadows the lives of those left behind. Every lead, every confession, and every search for a body has created fragments of a story that refuses to coalesce. For detectives, family, and true crime followers alike, the case represents the unsettling truth that some mysteries do not resolve neatly. They persist, reshaping the familiar into something unknowable. Family members live with an unending tension, the ambiguity gnawing at daily life. The children, now adults, recall the ordinary evening when their world shifted, the haunting absence of their mother pressing upon them like a phantom. Therapy sessions, interviews, and countless retellings have attempted to fill the gaps, but silence dominates. Each conversation with law enforcement, each speculative article rekindles old wounds. Every new investigative technique, no matter how sophisticated, seems to circle back to the same reality. The truth remains locked behind a wall of shadows. Detectives continue to revisit the case with fresh eyes. Modern technology, including DNA testing, ground-penetrating radar, and advanced mapping tools, has offered potential breakthroughs, but the trail remains stubbornly cold. Investigators analyze patterns of behavior, cross-check timelines, and study every known associate of the vanished woman. Each thread is dissected with precision, yet every potential breakthrough transforms into another question. The confession of a man now long dead casts a long shadow, tantalizing yet incomplete. Without a body, no verdict can be reached, leaving justice suspended in limbo. Criminal profilers and psychologists suggest multiple scenarios. Could she have left voluntarily, orchestrating a perfect disappearance? Or was she taken violently, her life ended in a single, untraceable moment? The absence of evidence makes either theory plausible. Every anomaly in past testimonies gains weight. Every forgotten sighting, every overlooked remark becomes a potential key to unraveling the mystery. The balance between plausibility and speculation is delicate, and each theory carries the haunting possibility of error. Public fascination endures. True crime enthusiasts, historians, and local residents revisit the details repeatedly, poring over every interview, photograph, and article. The narrative has become a cultural touchstone, a story of disappearance that refuses closure, a cautionary tale of how quickly the ordinary can become terrifyingly uncertain. Media coverage perpetuates intrigue, raising questions rather than resolving them. Discussions range from theories of abduction to voluntary escape, each debated with fervor, yet all are tinged with the stark reality of missing evidence. The most haunting aspect may be the unresolved tension between hope and despair. For some, the idea that she might still be alive lingers, a glimmer of possibility amidst the decades of silence. For others, the confession of a deceased man, combined with decades of fruitless searches, suggests a grim finality. Yet the absence of a body ensures that even this grim scenario cannot be confirmed. Every year that passes strengthens the duality of belief and doubt, leaving investigators, family, and viewers in a state of suspended uncertainty. Ultimately, the case illustrates the cruel patience of unresolved mysteries. Each lead, each theory, each faint clue becomes part of a web that grows denser, more intricate, and more elusive with time. The ordinary evening that vanished so long ago continues to ripple through the lives of those connected to it. Its unanswered questions echo relentlessly. Where did she go? Who was responsible? And why does the truth remain hidden, shrouded in silence and shadow? In the end, the story persists not in answers, but in the haunting space left behind by absence. It is a reminder that some disappearances do not conclude with resolution. They linger as questions, pressing on memory and imagination, compelling us to wonder, theorize, and hope. The mystery refuses to die, as enduring as the shadows that first swallowed an ordinary evening, leaving only uncertainty, suspense, and the relentless pursuit of a truth that may never be revealed.